Hello, Tilvani here, and today I thought I would share with you another map science video for 3.18 Sentinel League. Mid to late league, the number of gambling videos from myself and various other content creators increase exponentially. Around this time, it seems like almost daily, there is yet another edition of I double corrupted 8 Mage Bloods, and the results might surprise you. This brings us to the primary test for today's video, farming Temple Chronicles. With the rising demand for Locus of Corruption, Doriani's Institute, as well as temple modifier items for recombinating attempts, I'm curious to see how much value Alva will add to our maps. Speaking of our map, for this test, we will be running Beach, mostly because it's late league, and I'm in the mood for some reclined gaming. Honestly, something like Cemetery or Tropical Island would probably be a better choice, as Beach doesn't have a valuable divination card. However, Beach is pretty compact, and the boss is incredibly easy to find. This makes for an enjoyable mapping experience, as we will be rushing to the boss first to make the most of our Eldritch Altars. Alright, so we've got our 48 beach maps here, and I've gone ahead and chiseled and elked them. I've also rolled off any of the nastier modifiers with a few extra elks and scours. For our Sextants, we are running Alva. This will guarantee Alva incursions in every single map, and should result in 1 Temple Chronicle every 4 maps, or 12 Chronicles across the test. Next, we will be running Corrupted Strongboxes. This will guarantee that all of the strongboxes in our maps are rare quality. Because of this, it will save us 3 skill points on our Atlas passive tree, and it will also add 2 additional strongboxes to our maps. For our third Sextant, we will be running Elevated Essences. This will add 2 additional essences to our maps, as well as allow us to sustain our Remnants of Corruption. Finally, we will be running Elevated Shrine. Honestly, you could pretty much run whatever you want here. I picked Shrine since, like most Sextants, it will add a large number of monsters to our maps. And since we are taking the Shrine nodes on our Atlas tree, this seemed like the most useful. For this particular strategy, I wanted something kind of relaxed, so we won't be using any scarabs, and instead, we will be running Stream of Consciousness on our Atlas tree. Speaking of which, let's take a look at that right now. As you can see, we are running a pretty standard Elk and Go setup. Down here, we are taking additional essences and strongboxes. Pathing over here, we are grabbing Alva mission chance, as well as all of these blockers. Grabbing this map wheel for additional map sustain, and this Delirium wheel for a little bit of extra loot from Delirium orbs. Continuing on, we are grabbing further essences and Alva nodes. Pathing up here, we are grabbing Wrath of the Cosmos. If you're trying to level up, I'd recommend dropping this, as it is arguably the most dangerous passive on the tree. Backtracking a little bit, we are grabbing even more essence and Alva nodes. These Alva nodes are incredibly important, as they should give us a pretty high chance to see a useful Tier 3 Architect room. Time dilation up here isn't really that useful, but I figured we might as well grab it since we're taking the Alva mission chance nodes anyway. With all of the mission chance we are getting from the tree, you should theoretically be able to run the strategy occasionally without the use of Alva Sextants, which will boost your profits from Alva quite significantly. Moving on, we are grabbing Essence, Harbinger, and Shrine nodes, pathing through the middle of the tree here to grab Stream of Consciousness, Operative Strongboxes, Map Chance nodes, and Singular Focus. Theoretically, this should allow us to oversustain our favorited map. Pathing along here, we are grabbing more Harbinger nodes and Eater of World nodes here and here. Coming back down here, we are picking up Valley of Darkness. If you're not using Headhunter or Inspired Learning, don't take this, as it will just be making your maps harder. Next, we are grabbing more Harbinger, Shrine, and Map nodes. Finally, we are blocking more mechanics. The only mechanics I have not blocked are Delirium and Heist, but if you're not going to sell heist contracts on TFT, I'd probably block that as well. Next, let's take a look at our expenses. I've valued our maps at around 6 chaos each, for a total of 288 chaos. We spent another 15 chaos worth of chisels getting them to 20 quality, and a further 40 chaos worth of elks and scours, getting them with reasonable modifiers. We bought 4 charge Alva Sextants for 25 chaos each, totaling 300 chaos. We bought our 4 charge Strongbox Sextants for 5C each, for another 60 chaos total. Next, we spent 75 chaos total on our elevated Essence Sextants, and 60C for elevated Shrine. Finally, we will be spending an additional 3C per map on Curex Essence Craft, for a total of 144 chaos. This brings our total expenses to 982 chaos, or around 5.5x at the current exchange rates. Honestly, this is one of our cheaper tests this league, and Sentinel is absolutely busted, so I am certain we will make reasonable profits during this test. But I'm still curious to see just how much profit we'll make, and how it will compare with other Atlas strategies available. As I'm recording this part of the video, before actually running the test, we'll have to wait and see. I'm going to get to work blowing up these maps, and I'll see you on the flip side. Alright, I've run a few maps now, and I wanted to mention a few things that I've learned. First off, make sure you are pretty diligent about collecting your Chronicle from Alva every 4 maps. It is very easy to forget, and if you do, you'll end up wasting a charge of your Alva Sextant. Next, as I am running Wrath of the Cosmos, the maps can get a little rippy. As such, after killing the boss, I'd recommend running your Alva temples as you come across them. I know some players like to wait until the end of their map to run their league mechanics, but it's honestly less time efficient, and if you wait until the end of the map, when Wrath of the Cosmos is fully ramped, you could potentially die inside the Alva temple, wasting an incursion. I haven't had any trouble myself, but every build is a little different. As far as room upgrades go, I'd basically always just upgrade the current room type, unless the alternative room grants something good, like gems, negative player resistances, upgrading nearby rooms, or sacrifice a unique. Finally, if you have a Delirium mirror show up in your map, I'd recommend running through before activating it, applying your sentinels without dealing damage to anything, kill the boss, and log out. Then, you'll be able to use the portal at the start of your map to run the Delirium. If you pop the mirror first, there's a good chance when you reverse clear your map that you'll run out of the Delirium fog halfway through, and any Delirium monsters you empowered on your way to the boss will have disappeared, resulting in less loot. Do be diligent about this, however, as if you forget to log out, you'll be kicking yourself when you've cleared the entire map and see a Delirium mirror at the start of it. Alright, I have just finished running all 48 of our maps, and I've thought of a couple more things that I should mention. Unlike previous tests this league, I wasn't running any Magic Find gear, so if you're able to squeeze in a little Magic Find on your character, you could probably expect to see even higher profits. Next, as you'll see in a moment, most of our loot from this test came from general loot and currencies. This is great, as it makes liquidating our loot much easier. But I should mention that every single Sentinel I was running during this test had at bare minimum a % chance to add currency rewards. This is one of the most common reward types, so it shouldn't be too difficult to accomplish. Let's take a look at what all dropped during this test, what we are excluding from our calculations, and what we are including. But before we do, if you're liking my content this league, and you want to see more from me in the future, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. As mapping tests like this take a long time to produce, and you'd be helping me out considerably. Alright, here you can see our excluded loot tab. It includes all of our temple mod items, low value divination cards, and cluster jewels, as well as some other random items like fossils and junk contracts. This stuff all technically has value, however no one wants to sit in their hideout for hours selling 5 chaos items. So I've excluded anything worth less than 15 chaos from our calculations. Next up, we have our general loot tab. This includes all of our bulk currencies, high value items, and cosmic apex sentinels that dropped during this test. As usual, I've gone ahead and upgraded all of our lower tier currencies up via the vendor to make it easier to liquidate. Down here, you can see that we had 5 raw Exalted Orbs drop. In any other league, this would be ridiculously good RNG. However, Sentinels are absolutely busted. And as we are running currency on all of our Sentinels, this is pretty typical performance. Moving on, you can see our Essence tab. I've upgraded all of our Essences to the highest possible tiers, and we will be excluding all of the Screaming and Wailing Essences on the right here from our calculations. I was pretty liberal with my use of Remnants during this test, and as you can see, we still ended up netting over 100 of them. Next, we have our Chronicles. We had 2 with both Doriani's Institute and a Locus of Corruption. These are worth about 1x each at the time of this video. We had 1 Chronicle with just a Locus of Corruption. This was worth around 150 chaos. And we had 6 Temples with only a Doriani's Institute. These were worth about 130 chaos each. Finally, we had 3 Temples without any good rooms, which we have excluded from our calculations. Continuing on, you can see our Scarabs. These came from Operative Strongboxes, Eldritch Altars, and Sentinel and Delirium rewards. Here we have our maps. We dropped 61 uncorrupted Tier 16 beach maps during this test, over-sustaining our map pool by 27%. Next, we have our boss maps and invitations. We didn't have too many boss maps drop, which is pretty typical while running a singular focus strategy. However, we did receive 2 Screaming and 2 Writhing invitations. Finally, we had 2 Maven-related invitations drop. However, we will be excluding these from our calculations, as they aren't worth very much. Moving on, we have our Eldritch currency. We had quite a bit drop, as we are running a boss-rushing, Wrath of the Cosmos, Eldritch Gaze altar farming strategy. To my surprise, my Blade Vortex build held up incredibly well during this test, and I actually leveled up twice during it. Next up, we have our Heist tab. We've only included the Rogue's markers and valuable blueprints and contracts. Here we have our Recombinator tab. Quite a few of our Sentinels also had Sentinel reward type on them, in addition to currency rewards, so we pulled in just shy of 90 Recombinators during this test. Next, we've got our Delirium tab here. The amount of loot from Delirium was rather poor in my opinion, although we did get a few full simulacrums and 11 Delirium orbs, which I guess isn't too terrible for 4 skill points on the tree. Finally, we have our Sentinel tab. This includes all of our good reward Sentinels that dropped. However, we won't be including any of this tab in our profit calculations, as it is expected that you will be using your Sentinel drops to sustain your Sentinel pool for mapping. Alright, so now that we know exactly what we're dealing with here, let's take a look at our spreadsheet. Our general loot was unsurprisingly where the bulk of our revenue was coming from. We had nearly 3,000 chaos worth of drops in that category alone. Next up, we had Essences. Essences pulled in 1,122 chaos, or around 6 Exalted Orbs. We ended up making around 1,290 chaos from our Chronicles, or around 7x. Our Scarabs brought in another 321 chaos. Maps were valued again at 6 chaos each, for a total of 366 chaos. Boss maps brought in another 478 chaos. And Eldritch currency was 602C. Heist was actually pretty underwhelming at 224 chaos, but hey, I guess that's still roughly 4 chaos per map for basically 0 effort. We had 800 chaos worth of Recombinators drop, about 2x worth of Delirium related items, and this brings our total revenue for this project to 47.64x, or nearly a 9 times return on our initial investment. So if we subtract the initial investment of 5.4x from our total revenue of 47.6x, we made a total profit of around 42.2x in 48 maps, or 158 chaos per map. While focused, each map was taking me anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes to complete, so someone with a similar build could probably expect to run around 12 maps an hour, for a whopping total of 10.5x an hour. Next, let's take a look at how a few of our league mechanics fared. First off, was Alva actually worth running? Well, as you can see, we spent around 300 chaos on Sextants during this test, but we had almost 1,300 chaos worth of Chronicles drop. This ended up being around 1,000 chaos profit over 48 maps, or 20 chaos profit per map. I would definitely say Alva is worth running long term, as it adds a lot of monsters to your map as well. And if you had some Alva missions saved up, you could expect to see even higher profits, as the only real expense for Alva is the Sextant. Next, how did essences do? Essences were incredibly cheap to run, at around 220 chaos for the entire test. However, we ended up profiting 903 chaos, or 18.8 chaos per map. Assuming your build is able to handle the buffed essence monsters, Essence is absolutely worth running in the current meta, as it is a fairly quick mechanic that adds a lot of value to your maps. Finally, was Delirium worth running? Well, we had 0 expenses related to running Delirium, so the answer was undoubtedly going to be yes. Even though we only made 7.5 chaos per map from running Delirium, it didn't really make the maps more difficult for my build, and we only spent 4 skill points on the tree to gain pretty reasonable access to it. So to sum things up, Alva is definitely worth running late league, even outside of juicing situations, as streamers and content creators need an infinite supply of corruption chambers and are willing to pay a premium for them. Essence is a quick, profitable mechanic, assuming your build can handle the ridiculous Arch Nemesis buffs, and Delirium in a stream of consciousness setup is very lucrative for the amount of investment it requires. This test, while not being the highest profit per map of any test I've run this league, was definitely one of the best performing tests, as I saw the highest profit per hour while running the strategy, even though I wasn't using any magic find for this one. I would definitely be willing to run this strategy again in the future, and I strongly recommend checking it out. Anyway, thank you for watching, good luck with your league, and I'll see you in the next one.